Decoded.
You know how sometimes you just watch your dog doing something, you're like, what is going on in that little head of yours? I mean, we share so much with them, but sometimes it feels like they're speaking a whole other language.
It's true. Dogs can be such a mystery sometimes.
Today we're exploring More Than Just a Dog by Simon Wooler.
Oh, yeah, great book.
And he blends personal experience with real science-backed insights into dog behavior. So it's not just heartwarming stories.
No, it's not fluffy at all. It really digs deep into how dogs learn and how they communicate.
Which I think is super helpful for anyone who has a dog or, is thinking about getting one. We're going to pull out the best bits from the book, the stuff that'll make you go, uh-huh. So that's why my dog does that. So let's go back to the beginning of the whole human-dog relationship.
We're way back, thousands of years.
Right. What Wooler calls this ancient partnership. And he suggests that it started out as kind of a loose joint venture for mutual survival. It's like, you warn me about danger and I'll share my scraps with you. Pretty practical, right?
Yeah. I mean, it may make sense, especially back then when survival was the main concern.
Totally. And this partnership obviously worked out pretty well. I mean, just look at how well both humans and dogs are doing. I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
It really is. And one of the key reasons is that dogs have this amazing ability to bond with us and learn our rules like they're hardwired for it. Wooler mentions this study where they tried to train wolves and dogs to leave food alone, and the dogs were way better at resisting temptation. Even after tons of training, wolves would still sneak a snack.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. So dogs are just built differently when it comes to hanging out with us humans.
Totally. They're wired for cooperation in a way that wolves just aren't.
Okay, so we've talked about the science of dog behavior, but this book is also about a very specific dog, and his name is Thompson, initially known as Tyson.
Ah, yes, Thompson. Quite the character.
Yeah, Wooler talks about all these warnings he got about Thompson's behavior, like how he was reactive around other dogs and even some people. And they kept him on this super short, heavy chain lead, which kind of hinted at a bit of a troubled past.
Right.
But despite all that, Wooler felt this immediate connection. Like he had a soft spot for the misunderstood.
Yeah. It's really sweet, actually.
Yeah. It is. And it's amazing how he didn't let those initial warnings scare him off. Instead, he spent 3 weeks visiting Thompson at the shelter, just sitting quietly by his kennel to build trust.
3 weeks.
I know. Can you imagine the patience?
No, not at all. And the shelter staff were even giving Thompson a wide berth. They were clearly a bit wary of him.
Right.
But eventually, Thompson sat down next to Wooler.
What?
That's when Wooler knew he was all in. It was a huge turning point.
It was. That's when their journey truly began.
And it completely changed Wooler's life. He actually quit his job as a sound engineer after 20 years.
Wow. Talk about a life-altering decision. I know, right? He basically went from this fast-paced, results-driven world to one where patience and recognizing even tiny improvements were the new measures of success, all because of a dog.
It's amazing how dogs can do that to us, right? Make us completely rethink our priorities and how we define success.
Absolutely. And Thompson became way more than just a pet. He was Wooler's guide, his inspiration, even like a furry conscience. But early on, Wooler admits he didn't really know much about dog behavior. He relied on a lot of common myths like the whole pack leader idea.
Ah, yes, the pack leader myth. It's one of the biggest misconceptions out there. This idea that you need to constantly be dominant over your dog.
But the book debunks that myth completely right.
It does, and it explains why those dominance-based approaches are actually harmful.
Okay, so even basic things like taking Thompson to the vet were huge challenges at first. Wooler describes this hilarious but also stressful scene where it took like 4 people to get a muzzle on Thompson for his vaccinations.
It just goes to show how important it is to understand a dog's anxieties and to prepare them properly for potentially scary experiences, like going to the vet or wearing a muzzle.
Right, and then there was that time when a visitor came over and ignored Wooler's warnings about Thompson. And guess what? Thompson bit him.
Ouch! It's a reminder that we need to respect a dog's boundaries and their signals, especially if they have a history of reactivity.
Yeah, that incident was a huge wake-up call for Wooler, and it's what led him to enroll in the Academy for Dog Trainers, which he calls the Harvard of Dog Training.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It was a 2-year program covering everything from dog body language to learning theory. He basically got a crash course in dog psychology.
That's amazing.
And it gave him the tools to understand Thompson's behavior on a much deeper level.
So fascinating. I mean, the book goes into a lot of detail about how dogs learn, like the difference between operant conditioning and classical conditioning.
Right. And it explains how those principles apply to everyday interactions with your dog.
Absolutely. Like how we can use training to create positive associations with things that might normally scare a dog, or how we can teach them alternative behaviors to replace unwanted ones. It's all about understanding how their brains work.
Yeah, and the book even talks about the Pavlovian side effect of training, which basically means that by consistently pairing something neutral with a positive experience, you can actually change a dog's emotional response to that thing.
It's amazing, right? The power of positive reinforcement.
Totally.
Yeah,
The book also stresses that real behavior change takes time and patience. It's not a quick fix.
definitely not.
And one of the key takeaways is that we should try to pair things that scare our dogs with really good things while always staying below their fear threshold.
That's so important. We never want to push them too far too fast.
Absolutely. The book has this great analogy about parking. It explains how dogs learn from consequences, both good and bad. Like if your dog barks at the mailman every day and the mailman goes away, your dog has essentially learned that barking makes the mailman disappear.
That makes so much sense. They're constantly figuring out cause and effect.
Exactly. Now let's talk about nature versus nurture. How much of a dog's behavior is determined by their genes and how much is shaped by their environment?
That's the age-old debate, right?
Yeah. And the book presents some really fascinating research that suggests genetics plays a bigger role than we might think.
There's evidence that certain behavioral traits, like how easily a dog learns, their tendency towards aggression, their inclination to chase things, and even how much they seek attention, are all influenced by their genes.
It's mind-blowing to think about. So breed stereotypes might not be as reliable as we often assume.
Exactly. While certain breeds may have general tendencies due to their breeding history, individual variation within breeds is huge.
So every dog is truly an individual.
They are. And the book also talks about this really cool concept called epigenetics.
Epigenetics.
Yeah, it's the idea that environmental factors can actually influence how our genes are expressed, meaning our interactions with our dogs, the training we provide, and even their stress levels can potentially alter how their genes function.
Wow, that's fascinating. So even if a dog has a genetic predisposition for a certain trait, their environment can play a huge role in whether or not that trait actually shows up.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that we have a huge impact on our dog's behavior.
Okay, so moving on to how dogs communicate. The book really emphasizes that we can't just rely on our gut feelings when we're trying to interpret their body language.
Right. Our human biases and interpretations can really get in the way. It's so important to look at the entire context and to understand what happened before and after a particular behavior.
Yeah, there's this great example in the book where Wooler sees a dog with its ears back, a hunched posture, and lip flicks. And he initially thinks the dog is scared of the person reaching out to it. But it turns out the dog was actually reacting to a sudden loud noise nearby.
Yeah. It's a perfect illustration of how easy it is to misinterpret things if we don't have all the information.
Absolutely. And the book also delves into calming signals like yawning and lip licking. It seems there's some debate about whether these are always intentional signals to others or if they can also be ways for dogs to self-soothe when they're stressed.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah, it is.
And it highlights how context is key to understanding what those signals actually mean.
One of the coolest parts of the book is the section on play. Wooler quotes Einstein, who said, "Play is the highest form of research." And for dogs, it really is.
Totally. Play is like life rehearsal. It allows them to practice essential survival skills in a safe and fun environment.
And they even have these special signals called meta signals to communicate that it's all just for fun, like the play bow.
Right. And those bouncy, exaggerated movements.
Yeah, and those play faces with their mouths open. It's adorable.
It is, and these meta signals, along with things like shifts in activity, role reversals, and even one dog seemingly handicapping themselves, all help to make sure everyone involved understands that it's just play and that nobody's in any real danger.
It's so fascinating how complex their communication is. And speaking of communication, even barking is mostly a way for dogs to talk to us, according to Wooler.
It's true. And punishing a dog for growling is actually really counterproductive.
Why is that?
Because a growl is often an early warning signal that a dog is uncomfortable. If we punish them for growling, we're essentially taking away their ability to communicate that discomfort, which could make them more likely to bite without warning if they feel threatened. It's like removing the check engine light in your car.
Oh, wow. That's a really good analogy. So we should be encouraging growling, not punishing it.
Exactly. It's a valuable form of communication.
All right, let's talk about some of the biggest myths surrounding dogs, like the whole pack leader thing and the idea that we need to constantly assert dominance.
Ugh. Yeah, those myths are so persistent, they just won't die.
But Wooler debunks them pretty effectively,
He
right?
does, and he explains why those dominance-based approaches are actually harmful and can damage our relationships with our dogs.
Yeah.
It's all about cooperation and mutual respect.
Exactly. And the myth that using treats in training is just bribing your dog. I think a lot of us have felt a little guilty about that at times.
Yeah, I know. But the book clarifies that positive reinforcement, which often involves treats, is about rewarding a behavior after it's performed to make it more likely to happen again. It's not about bribing a dog beforehand to do something.
That makes sense.
And those warnings about tug of war and fetch being the wrong kinds of play,
Yeah.
totally outdated. Play in all its forms is so important for a healthy dog-human relationship.
So what about setting puppies up for success? How important is socialization in those early months?
Super important. Exposing puppies to a wide range of people, places, sounds, and other friendly vaccinated dogs in a positive way during their critical socialization period is crucial for their development.
So puppy parties and puppy classes are a good idea.
They can be, but it's really important to find classes that use positive reinforcement methods and that avoid perpetuating those outdated myths.
Good point. And a dog's early history can really shape how they adjust to a new home, right?
Absolutely. Dogs who haven't had a lot of positive experiences with humans might need more time and patience to settle in. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Now, we all know that food can be a great motivator for dogs, but Wooler argues that it's not the only one. Play itself can be an incredibly effective tool for training.
It definitely can. Play taps into a dog's natural instincts and makes learning more fun and engaging for both the dog and the handler.
And then there's this concept of the inflationary spiral in training, which I think a lot of dog owners can relate to.
Yeah, the inflationary spiral. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah. The book tells this story about Murphy, this dog who started out getting basic biscuits as rewards for doing tricks. But then the owner gradually had to up the ante to fancy cheese and then even lamb to keep Murphy motivated.
So relatable. It happens to the best of us.
It does. But the book gives some helpful tips on how to roll back that inflation and keep training rewards realistic.
It's all about consistency and patience.
A lot of the book is dedicated to understanding fearful dogs,
Yeah.
which is a really common issue for owners.
Yeah. Wooler describes fear as being shockingly easy to install and hideously difficult to uninstall. And because dogs don't have the same vocabulary as us to express their fear, it's crucial that we learn to recognize their subtle signals.
That's a great point. So how can we help our fearful dogs?
One of the most important things is to create a safe haven for them, a place where they can feel secure and escape from any perceived threats. And we need to be patient and understanding.
Consistent, right.
Yes, consistency is key.
The book has this really heartwarming story about Thompson and Nina, this other dog, gradually building trust through a process called desensitization and counter-conditioning.
It's a powerful reminder that we can help our dogs overcome their fears with patience and positive reinforcement.
And Wooler talks about creating a bubble of confidence and trust around a fearful dog. That's such a beautiful image.
It is.
The book also mentions the importance of taking a passive approach with some fearful rescue dogs when they first arrive, allowing them to habituate to their new environment at their own pace.
Yeah, it's all about letting them adjust and settle in on their own terms.
And it's important to remember that seemingly aggressive behavior is often rooted in fear. It's a dog's way of trying to make something they perceive as threatening stop or go away.
Exactly. And using aversive training methods can actually make fear worse and reduce a dog's ability to communicate their discomfort.
That's why positive reinforcement is so important.
It is. The goal is always to help our dogs feel safer and more secure, not to punish them for being scared.
Now, one of the most beautiful messages in the book is that dog training is ultimately about building and nurturing our relationships with our dogs.
It's not just about teaching them obedience commands. It's about understanding their needs and their motivations and creating a bond based on mutual respect and love.
Exactly. Wooler has this great story about Winston, a dog he worked with, who had specific preferences about how he liked to be approached and handled. And once Wooler figured those out, their training sessions became much more successful.
It's a reminder that every dog is an individual and that we need to tailor our approach to their unique personality.
So true. Okay, so let's say you're thinking about getting a dog. What advice does Wooler have for choosing the right one?
He says, don't rely too heavily on breed stereotypes. It's more important to consider practical factors like your lifestyle, your energy levels, and the individual dog's temperament.
So meet the dog, not the breed.
Exactly.
And he talks about the potential health problems associated with selective breeding and purebreds. That's something prospective owners should definitely be aware of.
Absolutely. And he strongly advocates for adopting from reputable rescue organizations, especially given the ethical concerns surrounding puppy farms and the illegal puppy trade.
Yeah, adopting a rescue dog can be an amazing
I
experience.
can.
But it's important to ask the right questions, understand the dog's history, and be prepared for a potential adjustment period.
Definitely. And reputable rescue organizations provide great support to adopters throughout that process. Wooler interviews Jemima Harrison from Black Retriever X Rescue, and she talks about how important it is to match the right dog with the right home.
So finding a good rescue organization is key.
It is.
For those of you who have multiple dogs, the book talks about the importance of understanding the dynamics within your furry family, and that sometimes you need to think about managing them, like different departments within a company.
That's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, it is. Wooler also shares this case study about a dog named Dora, who suddenly started exhibiting really severe behavior changes. And it turned out she had a medical condition called persistent pseudopregnancy, which can cause all sorts of behavioral issues.
So it's a reminder that sometimes behavior problems have a medical root.
And that we should always rule out any underlying medical causes before we assume it's just a training issue.
Absolutely. Wooler says it's crucial to find a veterinarian who's knowledgeable about behavioral issues. They can be a really valuable resource.
Yeah, for sure. And even seemingly minor changes to a dog's routine or move to a new house can be a big deal for them.
It's true. They thrive on consistency and predictability.
And when introducing a new dog to your existing dog, Wooler recommends doing it on neutral territory and creating what he calls an environment of plenty to minimize resource guarding.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And then there's the whole debate about jealousy in dogs. Does it really exist?
Well, Willer suggests that while dogs can definitely react to perceived threats to their relationships with us, it's probably more about protecting valued resources in the moment than the complex, future-oriented emotion we humans experience as jealousy.
So it's not quite the same thing.
It's not.
The book has this really interesting story about introducing an older rescue dog named Sadie into a home with a younger dog named Ruby. And there's some initial resource guarding issues, but with careful management and training, they were able to overcome them.
It's a great example of how to navigate those tricky multi-dog dynamics.
It's clear that dogs experience loss and grief when a human or canine companion is no longer present. But their expression of it might look different from ours.
Right.
And while that famous story of Greyfriars Bobby might be a bit embellished, the underlying message of loyalty and deep connection really resonates.
It does. And the book reminds us that dogs are resilient and capable of adapting to loss and forming new bonds.
And that they experience intense joy when they're reunited with loved ones after a separation.
Oh, yeah. That's always so heartwarming to see.
Our senior canine companions can experience the effects of aging just like we do. They might get creaky joints or experience cognitive decline.
And there's this condition called canine cognitive dysfunction, which is similar to Alzheimer's in humans.
Wow. So it's important to provide our aging dogs with physical and mental stimulation as well as social interaction to help them age gracefully.
Definitely. Wooler mentions the Dog Aging Project, which has found that companionship is incredibly beneficial for senior dogs.
There's this really touching story in the book about Luna, a dog who seemed persistently sad after the loss of her companion. And it turned out that her sadness had become a learned behavioral pattern.
And Wooler was able to help her shift that pattern by engaging her in simple obedience games. It's a reminder that even small changes can make a big difference.
Yeah, and it highlights the importance of creating a positive profit and loss balance for our dogs, where engagement and positive behaviors are consistently rewarded.
Exactly.
In his final thoughts, Wooler talks about how learning is a shared language between us and our dogs, and that by understanding their motivations through the lens of learning, we can become better advocates for them.
He calls himself a language teacher or interpreter between the human world and the canine world.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And he emphasizes that the time we invest in understanding and connecting with our dogs is always worthwhile.
No matter what challenges they might present.
Exactly. Life with a dog might not always be easy, but it's incredibly enriching.
It is.
So the key takeaway from More Than Just a Dog is that our relationship with these amazing creatures is incredibly deep and complex. And to truly understand them, We need to move beyond simplistic assumptions and embrace a blend of science, empathy, and personal experience.
Absolutely.
We hope this has given you some food for thought about your own connection with your dog, and that you'll consider applying some of these insights to your interactions with them.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Book Decoded. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic.
I can't wait.
See you then.
Bye.